has strongly criticized the rise of protectionist trade measures, warning that tariff hikes and other barriers are adversely affecting the global economy. He's also called for international cooperation for economic stability and inclusive globalization. Beyond the general debate, the corridors of the UN have been busy with side meetings and closed-door diplomacy. As the United Nations General Assembly continues, leaders are using every opportunity to shape global agendas and push national priorities. To help us understand all of these developments, I'm being joined by my colleague Thomas Porteous, who is currently in New York City. We had the opportunity to catch up with him earlier as well. Thomas, the big headline today is that Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and his address to the UNGA. What stood out to you from that speech, and what developments have followed since?
You join us here live, of course, from New York in front of the United Nations General Assembly headquarters, where this morning Israeli Prime Minister delivered a defiant address, but not before over 100 diplomats walked out in solidarity with the Palestinian cause. Of course, a huge gesture, which in fact disrupted the start of his speech, which he glared at as they walked out. But of course, this did not stop Benjamin Netanyahu in his rhetoric that Israel will, quote-unquote, finish the job in the Gaza Strip of eliminating Hamas, a hugely controversial war that has sparked international outcry throughout the international community. This week, of course, started with the recognition of a Palestinian state from that of the United Kingdom, France, and other former Israeli allies. He said that this recognition, he claimed that for Hamas, quote-unquote, murdering Jews pays off. That are his words. He used theatrics to demonstrate this. He gave a quiz, he said a pop quiz. He held up a board, which he has done previously in the United Nations, and said and claimed that Hamas continues to be a threat to everyone, Israel included, the United States included, and that Iran and the Houthis and Hezbollah all are still and continue to threaten Israel and American security, and so Israeli actions are in fact justified. As part of Israel's public diplomatic push, his UN label pin included this QN code here, linking to a filmed dramatization of the October the 7th attacks. And of course, this is being viewed as one of the most diplomatically isolating episodes for Israel in years. Now, many experts have labeled this a genocide. Of course, the UN has not done that as of yet. However, many commissions and bodies have. However, this can be seen as a huge development and will, of course, be in the history books for sure.
Absolutely. Additionally, China also took to the floor earlier as well. What key message was Beijing trying to send through its remarks?
Yes, indeed, of course. China, a huge player, followed Pakistan Shehbaz Sharif, who also spoke today. Chinese Premier Li Qiang spoke in the absence of Chinese President Xi Jinping and addressed the assembly and presented China as a cooperative global actor, of course, pushing for China as the next world superpower. He expressed confidence in China's ability to sustain economic growth amid, of course, this tariff and trade war. China, of course, has solidified itself as the global manufacturing superpower, tech superpower, and it also criticized unilateral and protectionist trade measures, of course, an indirect hit at Donald Trump's tariff policy. He called them impotence to global economic progress. And he also emphasized the need for international cooperation on climate development, something which Donald Trump slammed on Tuesday, and global stability. Now, of course, unilateralism seems to be a theme under Donald Trump. However, this push for a multilateral world remains here, but if it but the future of the UN, of course, hangs in the balance. Does it still have the strength that it used to? Those are the questions that we still need to ask.
Beyond the general debate itself, what else, in fact, has been happening around the United Nations today in terms of side meetings, a closed-door diplomacy or negotiations?
Now, another major development outside of the General Assembly floor, the UN Security Council is weighing on Iran's sanctions, on a proposal from Russia and China to delay these snapback sanctions. The reimpositions of sanctions on Iran, which were agreed in 2015, tied to its nuclear program. Of course, their nuclear program has been subject to not only a war, but of course, huge tensions within the region and the Western world, and particularly the United States. Western countries, including Britain, Germany and France, oppose the delay and argue that the snapback mechanisms should go immediately back into effect. And of course, we will continue to bring you that decision as soon as we get it. But a huge, significant UN Security Council vote occurring today.
Thomas, we're now heading into the penultimate day of this year's General Assembly. How has today, in fact, shaped the mood, and how does the week feel overall from your perspective on the ground?
Well, yes, of course. So far, the United Nations General Assembly has been as expected. Donald Trump opened the week with a speech to remember, slamming the body, claiming to have stopped 7 wars itself, critiquing it for not keeping peace. And of course, in the year of 2025, when the Gaza humanitarian crisis is at the front of everybody's minds here, how can one argue? Of course, he said he himself stopped 7 wars. These flurry from combat, border skirmishes to out-and-out conflicts like the India-Pakistan war, many of which of Donald Trump's claims are disputed. But what is not disputed is that the United Nations seems to be in crisis. Of course, there is a look to the future of how unilateralism can move forward, how the world can join together and bring peace and prosperity, which is why this organization was founded in the first place for. And now in a polarizing world, which seems to be moving further and further apart, with the speeches and the likes of Benjamin Netanyahu getting up on that podium today and certainly not backing down in his rhetoric, that goes to show for you how much of the geopolitical world stands today. Okay. Noddies.
All right. That was, of course, my colleague Thomas reporting from New York City and bringing the latest developments as far as the UNGA is concerned. Meanwhile, we shift our focus to developments coming in from the Middle East. The director of the Palestinian Foreign Ministry's European Affairs, Adel Atieh, has now slammed Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's UNGA speech. The minister has stated that Netanyahu's speech was saturated with lies and falsification. He's also added that the speech only reflected isolation and the anxiety of a power that knows it stands on the wrong side of history. Meanwhile, as the Israeli offensive in Gaza continues, Doctors Without Borders, or the MSF, has now been forced to suspend its activities in Gaza City. The organization has released a fresh statement highlighting this. The statement emphasizes that although the organization has been forced to suspend its activities in Gaza City, they will stay operational in the south and central part of the enclave. More developments coming in from the Middle East. The global Sumud flotilla, a fleet of about 50 civilian boats carrying humanitarian aid for Gaza, has now reached the waters of southern Crete. Now, the flotilla, which is set sail from Barcelona earlier this month, aims to challenge Israel's naval blockade and deliver supplies to civilians in Gaza, where the UN warns of widespread hunger. On board are international lawyers, parliamentarians and activists, including Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg. Organizers say that the boats will head into international waters and attempt to reach Gaza early next week. The voyage has now heightened tensions after organizers stated that drones attacked the flotilla this week, causing damage. However, no injuries have been reported. Spain and Italy, meanwhile, have dispatched naval ships to assist their citizens, while Greece has in fact pledged safe departure from its waters. Listen in to what a Greek organizer had to say.
We are very happy because yesterday we joined the rest of the boats coming from Italy, Spain and Tunisia, and we united as one common fleet of 44 ships. Our next destination is Gaza. Our mission is to break the illegal Israeli siege and create a people's humanitarian corridor. We rise to end the genocide of the Palestinian people. We sail against the complicity of our countries. Demand safe passage for our vessels, because no one is free until we are all free. All eyes on Gaza, all eyes on the fleet.
Israel, meanwhile, has vowed that the flotilla will not pass, warning that attempts to breach the blockade only serve Hamas. Its navy has stated that it is prepared to intercept the vessels. Italy, meanwhile, has urged the flotilla to accept a compromise by delivering aid via Cyprus for distribution through Catholic Church's Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem. Israel backs this plan, but organizers have meanwhile rejected it, stating that their mission is also to deliver solidarity with Palestinians. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Matti Zweig, geopolitical expert, joining us from Tel Aviv. Of course, high-octane developments have been taking place in New York and in the Middle East as well. We've in fact seen a response from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who states that Israel has in fact been making efforts to feed the people of Gaza. In the meantime, there are also statements coming in from Donald Trump that a peace deal, a peace pact is going to be inked very soon as well, and that hostages are going to be released. Do you think such a pact is on the horizon?
Well, thank you for having me. And I would say that things looks very dramatic now because all the focus is on all these speeches in the UN. But really on the ground, they didn't change until now. Israel is pushing Hamas to try to make them free the hostages and dismantle themselves. This has been causing a lot of deaths, a lot of bloodshed, because this is a war, not a genocide. And nobody can say it's a genocide, even if they repeat it 1,000 times, because it doesn't meet the parameters of a genocide in any way. Yes, they meet the parameters of a big war. Okay, this is from one side. Israel is putting inside a lot of humanitarian aid or letting pass humanitarian trucks to bring food and medicines. But this is in the middle of the war, and this has a lot of problems. The same as with the doctors that they are complaining now that they are stopping because they are harsh conditions. They were in harsh conditions also 5 minutes ago and 5 days ago and 5 weeks ago. So this declaration is for publicity. They continue to do what they can do in the middle of the war, and they will continue, of course. And this is what's happening now. About the flotilla, for instance, they are talking very high, but this is mainly a bunch of people that they like to take selfies to themselves and to bring a little humanitarian aid, because it's not going to be some big humanitarian aid coming from the sea. So they are making a point of what they think that they have to say about the world, about pressing the world, to press Israel to stop the war under their conditions, I mean under Hamas conditions. And this is the big problem here. Every time you listen in the world, thousands of times, Israel stop the war, you never listen even once, Hamas stop the war. Hamas free the hostages. Hamas dismantle themselves because nobody wants you, including the Arab countries, including Europe and the United States and all the free world. Now it's going to be a new plan. This plan says that Tony Blair is going to be the head of an interim government that is going to be composed by people of different Arab countries, the UN, the US, and this is something I've been saying in the last year or 6 months, that this is exactly what is going to happen. Nothing is going to change the internal government, to change Hamas from the government, if it's not going to be from a coalition that is going to stabilize. And I'm sure that Israel is going to back this if Hamas is going to free the hostages again and dismantle themselves again. So all these high talks is because of all the big focus and the nice lights that you have in the UN. But in 1 or 2 days, they will continue as they are, as if Hamas is not going to change their path with their masters besides them, which are Qatar and other forces, so nothing is going to change.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Meanwhile, viewers, we're shifting our focus away from the Middle East towards what's taking place in Europe. The president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, has met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. After the meeting, the Belarusian president talked about the Russian proposal on Ukraine that President Putin had earlier discussed with US President Donald Trump at the Alaska summit. Lukashenko appreciated the proposal and stated that Ukraine should accept it or else they might lose their entire territory. However, he did not share any details of the proposal as such. Earlier, he put forward his idea of building a nuclear power plant in eastern Belarus that could supply electricity to the Russian-controlled parts of Ukraine. Listen in to what President Lukashenko had to say.
Есть на столе хорошее предложение. Мы с президентом Путиным обсуждали, я не стану о них говорить, это президент сам скажет. Хорошее предложение. Предложение по Украине, которые на Аляске в том числе были услышаны Дональдом Трампом, увезены в Вашингтон для того, чтобы подумать и обсудить. Очень хорошее предложение. Если украинцы не пойдут на эти предложения, это будет то, что было в начале СВО. Это будет еще хуже, они потеряют Украину. Тогда надо было остановиться. Слушайте, весь Восток был бы украинский, кроме Крыма. Нет, не остановились, потеряли Восток. Сейчас не остановится. С моей точки зрения, человека глубоко погруженного в эту ситуацию, они потеряют всю Украину.
With us on the broadcast is Professor Rohan Gunaratne, International Affairs expert, joining us from Singapore. Thank you so much, sir, for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. A key meeting has taken place between President Lukashenko of Belarus and Russia. In focus over here is using nuclear energy in order to power areas that are now under Russian control after it has annexed these areas in Ukraine. Now, energy infrastructure has often been targeted by both Russia and Ukraine on either side of the border. In the midst of this conflict, we just know just a while back that there were some refineries that were struck by Ukraine within Russia itself. What do you make of this fresh bid by Lukashenko, this new proposal that he has mooted to Putin?
Lukashenko and Putin, they have a very close friendship. Belarus is working very closely with Russia. The most recent meeting that they had in Moscow clearly demonstrates that Putin is moving in the direction of restoring peace in their fight in Ukraine. But he has three demands. One is that there should be a limitation on the Ukrainian forces. Second is that Ukraine should not have any ambitions to join NATO. And third is the Russians want more land from Ukraine. So this negotiation is going to take a long time. But the first step of that negotiation is President Trump meeting with President Putin in Moscow, and it is a follow-up of their meeting in Alaska. And certainly, other than the Ukrainian president, there will be a participation of other leaders from NATO, because the real dispute is a dispute between Europe and Russia. It's Ukraine, what happened in Ukraine is just the end product of that dispute. The bigger dispute needs to be resolved.
Absolutely, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. Meanwhile, viewers, more news coming in from New York. We're now learning that on the sidelines of the 80th session of the UNGA, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his Indian counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar have held discussions focused on preparations for the upcoming Russia-India summit scheduled for the end of the year. The two leaders addressed important international and regional issues, including the ongoing war in Ukraine and developments in the Israeli-Hamas conflict. Both ministers emphasized their commitments to strengthening the special strategic partnership between Russia and India. They also, in fact, agreed to enhance cooperation within multilateral organizations such as the G20, BRICS, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, underscoring the importance of collaborative efforts on the global stage. With us on the broadcast is Ambassador Suresh Goyal, former Indian diplomat, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting bilateral meeting on the sidelines of the UNGA. That's not the only thing that India has done. In fact, Dr. Jaishankar also chaired and India also hosted a meeting of the BRICS nations on the sidelines. What do you make of this posturing by India in New York?
Well, it's not merely posturing, but I think I would really call it in terms of redefining or realigning India's relations in the world, which has changed quite drastically over the last couple of months, particularly since January, after the USA elections and after the changes that we have seen coming from the USA in terms of its own policies, international policies. And therefore, I think in terms of our own emphasis on multipolarity of the world and in terms of our own strategic autonomy, it became important to go to discuss the whole gamut of relations with Russia once again. I think there is a huge content already in the relationship. Energy in form of oil is only one. Defense, we have common interest in Antarctica, and food security. There are so many issues that we need to discuss together really in this world. So, and mind you, one more thing, Putin doesn't travel very often these days. And therefore, if he's coming to India for a summit meeting, that I think is by itself is huge, not only in optics, but also in terms of messaging to the world. Yes. Yes,
Absolutely. And Ambassador Goyal, a quick follow-up to that as well. Since the UNGA general debate is underway, we do expect Dr. Jaishankar to be speaking on the floor later today itself. What are your expectations from his speech, considering the fact that the war in the Middle East, Russia, Ukraine has taken center stage as well? We've in fact heard the Pakistanis come out and once again level ridiculous allegations against India.
I really wouldn't know what EAM Jaishankar's speech would cover, but having known him before, I can only just make a guess, because Mr. Jaishankar is more a strategist really. He thinks through larger issues, he thinks through framework, and therefore my expectation would be that his speech would be really talking about the kind of structure of the relationship that India looks at in the coming days, coming years. That is again going to focus on the situation in Middle East. But more than that, really, it is going to be talking about how India sees the world changing and how India looks at the relationship, its major relationships, including the USA, including Russia, its role that it plays in the plurilateral organizations, BRICS, BIMSTEC, but I think BRICS and SCO, G20, Global South, those were the kind of issues which I think would really give an overall structure to what we have in mind in terms of Indian role, if I can put it this way, Indian role in the changing world.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. Viewers, more news coming in. The United Nations Security Council has rejected a resolution proposed by China and Russia to delay the reimposition of sanctions on Iran. Now, Russia's Deputy Ambassador Dmitry Polyansky has rejected the UK and France's claims about the snapback mechanism as invalid. Listen in.
Господин председатель, что касается заявления Великобритании и Франции, что они якобы запустили снэпбэк, то мы категорически не признаем их состоятельность и много раз подробно излагали наши аргументы, в частности, в распространенном совместном письме министров иностранных дел России, Китая и Ирана от 28 августа.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi declared that Tehran will never bow to Western pressure. Take a look.
Iran will never bow to pressure. We respond only to respect. The choice is clear: escalation or diplomacy. The responsibility lies with those who broke their commitments and undermined international law. And thank you. Iran's position on snapback is clear. It is illegal, void, and has no standing. The E3, having breached the deal, cannot claim significant non-performance. Resolution 2231 restrictions will expire permanently on 18 October 2025. Any attempt to revive or extend them is null and void.
Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has raised concerns over the potential for further strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, questioning who can guarantee whether Israel will not launch future attacks. Take a look.
We accept everything that we need to accept according to the international frameworks. But the problem is, who will give us assurances that Israel will not carry an attack independently in order to take out our installations? We have been members of the IAEA. We have been and continue to be signatories to the NPT.
More news coming in. At the United Nations General Assembly, Venezuela's Foreign Minister Juan Gil Pinto has now accused the United States of fabricating what he called vulgar and perverse lies to justify military threats against his country. Pinto told world leaders that Washington is attempting to bring war to the Caribbean and South America in order to push regime change in Caracas and seize Venezuela's vast oil and gas wealth. He's also denounced years of sanctions, destabilization attempts, and even a drone assassination plot against President Nicolas Maduro. Now, according to Pinto, Venezuela is a nation that loves peace but will always be ready to defend it. His remarks drew applause from the Venezuelan delegation as tensions between Caracas and Washington remain high. Well, due to paucity of time, this is all we have for this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.